All right, I think we are live and ready to go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It's time for another edition of the Weekly Member Spotlight. I'm very excited to sit down today with someone who I am just meeting, I think, in person for the first time. I do recognize your face, Dan, so I'm sure I've seen you in our years of combined service in this industry somewhere along the way, but have not yet had the privilege to formally meet. So, good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's fun to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to dive into your interview. But before we do that, I wanted to make mention of two things that are coming up. Very exciting events for the GCNKAA. First and foremost, you saw us go live with Dave Lockard from CBRE on Wednesday. Dave and his team are working ferociously on their presentation for the 2020 State of the Industry. I guess it's 2021. We're going to talk about what happened in 2020 and where we're going in 2021. So everyone always looks forward to that event. There's still plenty of time to register. It is a virtual event, so reach out to someone at the GCNKAA office and they'll get you set up for that. And then on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, I wore my green just to promote this actually. It is our annual business exchange event. And so it is going to be another virtual event with the hopes that we can have a live and in-person event later in the year, probably August or October rather. So be on the lookout for information about that, but we hope you will join us for the virtual event on March 17th. Dan, I'm very excited. Uptown's going to be joining us for the Business Exchange event. So thank you for your participation with that. I'd love to just ask you to take a moment as we kick this off, introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about who you are, what you do with Uptown, and how long you've been in the industry.
Well, I'm Dan Schimberg, and I'm president of Uptown Rental Property, which is a company I founded in the mid 1980s. Essentially, started as a one-man show, and there was just it was really before student housing was an industry itself. And I went to UC, and there was just dumpy places to live, and it just felt like there was a niche there, a niche of doing a better job. And before information was so easily exchanged, essentially landlords of students, collegiate students, there was no way for students to communicate with other students about good and bad landlords. And so every year landlords had a fresh crop of naive freshmen and sophomores and could really just take advantage of that crop of people. And so I really got started with rehabbing single family properties and renting them to students and just doing it better, and really trying to provide a product that didn't exist. Over the years, student housing has emerged as an entire apartment industry segment. And we just, because of when I started and how I started, we were just on the forefront of that.
Well, that's interesting. Before you started Uptown, were you involved in the apartment industry in some other way?
No, that's right when I left the University of Cincinnati, and so I just kind of dove in. In fact, I was working at Stereo Lab to actually earn a living and rehabbing houses on the nights and days I wasn't working at Stereo Lab in Surrey Square Mall in Norwood. So,
Nice.
because
What
we
were
all
you going
know
to
it.
college for? What did you plan to do before you found out the apartment industry?
Oh, just a business degree, and but I was always entrepreneurial, and I was never a great student, and I was kind of the C student and class clown, and so this was a
Right.
perfect outlet for me.
That is really, really interesting and very interesting about the timing of getting into this industry too, because that was an interesting fact about how there was no Facebook, social media, online reviews, word of mouth even was probably a much smaller scale. How many units does Uptown represent today?
Well, we have about 3,800 apartment units in the greater Cincinnati area. Most of those are in the city of Cincinnati itself, and we have about 2,000 apartment units around the University of Cincinnati. But a lot of those are two, three, four, five bedroom units, and so all units aren't created equal. These are not typical units that you would see in an apartment complex out in the suburbs or outside of the loop. So these are kind of highly sought after, beautifully located assets right near the
Right.
university.
Right. So, what do you think, being in the student housing segment, what do you think is the most challenging part of representing that specific segment versus, the apartment industry as a whole?
Well, I would say the most challenging is there's a little bit more wear and tear on the buildings, and the turnover is more. The average tenancy is really 2 years, so
Mhm.
we are turning over about 1,000 apartments a year. One of the biggest challenges is that you're turning over all the units in a very short amount of time,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of our Super Bowl every single year. Last year, I think we turned over 963 apartments and you're talking about a 2 to 3 week period.
Mhm.
So it's a very, very intensive period for us to move all of these people out, get all of the units set and turn back in, just from a pure physical turn, to be able to paint and clean and rekey, that part of it. And then you have all the property management components of getting out 1,000 security deposits turned around, and really everything that goes into turning over an apartment. That's clearly the biggest challenge in student housing, I would say,
Mhm.
on a physical logistics level.
Right. So, when all of that is done every year, do y'all do anything to just sit back and celebrate it or acknowledge all the hard work that went into that period of time?
Yeah, we do. We always have post-turn kind of debriefs and
Yeah.
what are the mistakes and how can we do it better?
Right.
Because we're always thriving for improvement, and we always have a big turn celebration moment to try to acknowledge everyone's work that's gone into it. And honestly, once you get everyone in, there's kind of this 2 to 3 week period where you're getting everybody settled. But it is literally like all of a sudden you have 2,500 new residents living in your apartments, because this is 1,000 units. So it might be 2,000, 3,000 people physically
Right.
moving into buildings. We have a
So,
line out the door, with
oh,
parents.
I'm sure.
So it's,
I have such limited experience. We manage a site. Well, it actually just sold. Village Green had managed it for 30 plus years in Columbus. That was off campus housing, but served the Ohio State University. And so it was about 600 ish units. And so we went through that on a very small scale every year. So I have no concept of what that life must be like. But one thing I wanted to ask you, and I've been really excited to talk to you about this. So I went in advance of our interview and I was looking at the Uptown website because, again, this is my first time really sitting down with you. And I know Craig somewhat from serving on the board with him. But I was interested in Uptown and I was looking at your team and your staff, and you've got a very large team. And I know that you probably have like a centralized unit to run the units that are spread out versus in our industry, we have a community office at a property where there's, 300 or 400 units. Is there some program by which you recruit and train the team of people that it takes to be able to be successful in this industry? How did you build that team?
it is really difficult. We certainly have a unique model.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at our portfolio around the University of Cincinnati, we really treat that as one giant apartment complex with a centralized office. And so what we've really tried to do is master scattered site management, which is quite difficult.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so we end up training from within, for sure, as people move up through the ranks. We have about 100 employees, um, and we run a fairly lean operation. I mean, we basically have one central office that manages a couple thousand apartments. So in many ways, it's a very efficient process, and there are other ways that make it somewhat cumbersome. But we do. It's difficult to bring people in from outside because the model is unique, and many people have not been trained in that, with the way we work. Um, we also have an incredible track record of retaining our employees. We take very good care of them. great benefits, and it's a fun kind of family environment that we've been able to maintain.
Nice. Well, I really liked how the setup had everyone's picture and what their position was and how it was organized by location, and it was very well done. So, and I really like the
Thank
picture of the backdrop of Cincinnati on the main page. So I know how important a website is to your brand and your reputation, and so I wanted you to know that. Thumbs up from me over here. Another question I was really excited to ask you because, and not to put you on the spot, this one's, I hope you've got a good story. Having been in the business for 35 years, I'm sure you've seen your fair share of antics. And then to be representing the student housing segment, what's one of the most memorable stories you've come to encounter during your time in the business?
It's really, you are putting me on the spot a little bit, but, constantly we are dealing with really people who've never lived outside of the home. This is
Right.
always everyone's first apartment, which is unlike anything else other than student housing. These are
Right.
all people, these are kids who may have never touched the thermostat in their house, who are putting Dawn dishwashing detergent, in the dishwasher because
Yeah.
that's dishwasher detergent, and they store their extra towels in the drawer in the oven, where you normally keep metal pieces there, and so it's that kind of frustration, if you will, that keeps it always interesting. And
Right.
we've all had disasters at swimming pools and
Oh
elevators
yeah.
and so on. And we're also dealing with kids who go out and party a lot, and so we are, uh, we're having issues like that, and with the first time people are driving moving trucks, and the first time are people, and so that component of it keeps the stories coming just really constantly.
I just
Um,
knew you were going to mention something about a keg, finding a keg somewhere or having to find keg disposal every month.
we've had naked people in hallways, and
Oh, I can only imagine.
we've had people take over our clubhouses for private parties, and it's endless. There's lots of partying that goes on, and that has to be managed.
Okay, I've said this to anyone who will listen, but I really think you have something here, and it could be an ancillary income stream for Uptown. Y'all need to look into the reality TV show sector
Yeah,
because I bet you could gain a following.
there is no question, and just really recently in the last 5 years, I've kind of been insulated a little bit of the daily stories that are going on because we have 5 property managers that are kind of running things that go up to regionals, and so I get somewhat insulated. But
Right.
all of a sudden, there was a car one day in a swimming pool, and I didn't hear about it for 4 or 5 days later, of what occurred. So I'm not as briefed on the daily hysterical stories that are going on, but
I don't
our
know your
security,
team.
our security footage is pretty entertaining once in a while.
Oh my goodness. I bet. I was going to say I don't know your team, but I bet there's a rule. We just have to make sure Dan knows before he sees it on TV.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's fun. And I'm sure you could talk for days about the stories. A little more serious of a question. Again, with your longevity in this industry, I would love to ask you what kind of advice would you offer to people who are just getting involved in the apartment industry about their
Well,
career?
and I mentor a bunch of kids on an ongoing basis from the real estate school, and really just people who reach out to me. Um, Look, the first 3 rules of real estate are the same rule, which is location, 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 and none of us can ever forget that. And for people getting into the industry, um, location rules all the time in real estate, and it's critically important. Um, and I won't mention the person's name, but a very successful guy used to carry a little bit of dirt in a Ziploc around in his pocket. Um, and he would pull it out every once in a while. There's a very successful guy in real estate, and he said, God's not making any more of this. Essentially that when you have really good dirt, when you have really good locations, keep it and take good care of it. The second component that we have a reputation of is when you own real estate, take very good care of it because it is the golden goose, and don't just bleed it dry, but make sure you're really putting the money back into it. And it's one of the things we come very clean up front with our investors is our priority is going to be the real estate, the bricks and mortar, and making sure that we take very, very good care of our real estate, the brand, the reputation, and really how the real estate is preserved. It's very, very important.
Very good advice. I've never heard anything like that. Bag of dirt, and God's not making any more of this. That's profound and very true, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is again. I don't want to put you on the spot, Dan, but this is fascinating conversation. What is a very sage piece of advice you received along the way in your career that has made a difference?
Um, Really, the most advice, the best advice was actually on Memorial Day about 18, 20 years ago. And a retired real estate guy who now lives out in Colorado. And basically the advice is stay in your lane, and you really only have to be really good at one thing. And you don't need to be an industrial guy and an apartment guy and and an office guy, but stay in your lane. And it really transcends to many industries.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I describe it to my mentees is quarterbacks on a football team do not need to know how to kick a field goal. And so when you're good at whatever the industry is, and certainly in the apartments, stay in your lane, stay in the location where you are most knowledgeable. When I first got started, and we were buying apartments not only in Clifton, I settled in on the I-71 corridor from Clifton to Kenwood. And so as I was rehabbing and as I was buying apartment buildings, that was my lane in effect. And so if someone said, I have a great deal in North College Hill, I wouldn't go look at it. And by staying in your lane and really being the best at what you do in a small niche is really all you need to accomplish, is being really good at a single component. And as I said, that transcends across many businesses and industries.
That is one of my favorite things, and my team makes fun of me all the time for all of the football analogies that I use, but that is one of my most I think valuable pieces of advice as well. Or maybe just, I don't know if anyone ever shared that with me and articulated it the way you did, but I just came to realize whatever you are, whatever your highest and best use is on the team, you have to focus your energy there. And we get distracted, especially in this industry, when you have ownership to represent, the residents, the associates that do all the turns every year. You've got so many people to kind of answer to, and you feel like you have to be everything to everyone. But you can't be the quarterback and the offensive line and the kicker and all of those
Yeah.
things and live to tell about it, right? So I
Right.
like that. Very good. Well, is there anything else about Uptown that you'd like to share before we dive in and get to know you a little bit better on a personal level?
No, look, I'm really proud of our team, and Uptown has grown consistently since 2007. And we've really become, an active developer in the city, and I'm just really proud of our team. And you get to a point when you have 100 employees that you cannot, this isn't me. This is really the team and the infrastructure that's in place, and we're doing a lot of great stuff. We're really involved in the community. We love giving back and taking good care of our employees and our team. And so no, my hat's off to the group that really makes it happen now.
Well, again, I know Craig somewhat through our service together on the board. I know the GCNKAA is very appreciative of your support and involvement with our organization, and we look forward to you growing and becoming, stronger in the city. It makes our city stronger when you have strong local partners or affiliates. So I know we've worked in and around, the Clifton area in my career with Village Green, and you can't hardly turn on a street without seeing an Uptown, sign or Uptown banner somewhere. And so you definitely have made your mark, and congrats for that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this is again one of my favorite parts. Just getting to know our members a little better. I'd love to invite you to share a little bit about your family.
I have a wife and 4 kids, and we are just empty nesters now. And my son Max is going to be coming. He's been working with North American Properties for about a decade. He's coming back to join our team this spring. My daughter Robin is in her young 30s and has 1 kid and hopefully 1 more soon. And she is a property manager for our office. She was a regional and has pulled back a little bit. And then I have my 2 youngest kids are in college at RIT in Rochester, studying cybersecurity, and my other son's at High Point in North Carolina.
Wow, very nice. So, okay, yeah. This is way out of line of me, but like I see in the background, and I asked you earlier, like where you were, because I love, seeing everyone kind of working from home these days. It's interesting to see how people live. Is that ET?
Yeah, I'm in my wife's study because we have some people visiting here, so I had to find a little corner in our house, and she's a pop culture fiend, so she has all kinds of pop culture stuff around.
Nice, I love stuff.
That. Yes, that is ET.
One of our developments, the Red in Hyde Park, our owner is a bit of, I guess you could say the same kind, has that pop culture. And there's so many interesting things and old, like lunch boxes, metal lunch boxes, and Pez and little statues and things. And every time there, I see new things that they've added. So I was distracted, but I thought that was ET.
Yeah.
Well, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, we have a great spot in New Hampshire, so I really go back and forth to New Hampshire quite a bit, especially in the summertime. Mm-hmm. We love to travel, and that's been derailed over the last year. But exercise, and we're kind of foodies. My wife's a chef as well, trained chef, and so we really enjoy cooking. I have a neat wine collection that's a working wine cellar, and no enjoy about that. But I really work hard to reach out to friends and have a broad network of people I stay very, very close to, and so really that as well.
What is your favorite wines to enjoy?
What?
One of your favorite wines?
Oh boy, I don't know. That's like choosing
red wine or white wine. Let's make
your favorite children. No, I'm a red wine guy, and
yeah.
I would say Oregon Pinots, and I love Brunello de Malticinos, and I'm pretty open as long as it's well crafted. So
very nice.
Love that a lot.
Well, we were talking about traveling earlier. What is one of the best vacations or most memorable vacations you've taken?
Taking our whole family to the BVI's on a sailing trip was an incredible trip, and then a couple of years ago, we decided to do a geopolitical trip to Israel with our entire family and significant others, and it was a highly choreographed trip because I wanted the 4 kids to understand just how critically important this region of the world was. It was not a religious based trip. So that was a fascinating trip. And then my wife and I, a few years ago, we don't like to give each other things for Christmas. We try to pick an experience. And so I gave her a U2 concert when they were touring the world. And I said, for her Christmas present was pick a U2 concert anywhere in the world you want to go. And wow. So we ended up going to Amsterdam to see U2, which was fabulous. And then last year we went on a backroads hiking trip through Italy, and went all through Tuscany and Umbria, and through wine country hiking. So those are some of the highlights in the last 5 years.
Well, that's incredible. So obviously, with the pandemic, travel has been, put on the kibosh, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But what is going to be one of your next trips? Have you talked about where you're going when the world goes back to normal?
Yeah, we want to. We're really going to try to get to Croatia this year,
Oh, wow.
and do an excursion up the coast, a multi-trek excursion, biking, hiking, and kayaking, and try to do a. We're kind of active vacationers. I'm not very good at sitting around. In
Right.
fact, I'm horrible at it, and so I'm not good at beaches after a day or two. So
Right. Well,
yeah.
that's wow. What a great trip to look forward to. So I want to go back a quick second. I can't know your wife is a chef and not know what your favorite meal to enjoy or what is her favorite food to cook.
Oh, that's like the wine question. I mean, she's just really skilled, but we do really, really interesting salads, and she's got this whole repertoire of kind of wholesome foods.
Hmm.
But is always cooking her own stock to make her own soups, and she's just a very accomplished and diverse chef. When we were dating, she asked my favorite dessert, and I said chocolate pecan pie, and so she had to, she's perfected a recipe on that, out of
Wow.
her piece. So
How
um,
often do you get to enjoy that? Is it
oh,
a fancy event only, a special event only, or anytime you want?
whenever I want, but I don't request it very often because
Right.
you know, got to keep my girly figure.
There you go. It sounds like you burned quite a few calories in your vacation excursion. So,
Yeah.
did you find the COVID-15?
Um, you know, um, I was listening to a guy speak the other day about problems, and for most of us and anyone listening, the way we've had to navigate COVID versus most of the people in the world is it's been a whole lot easier on people who have resources and live in a country like ours, and knowing this has been a global pandemic, and people in Bangladesh and people in area that don't have ways to wash their hands and don't have
Right.
access to and don't have access to good health care. Keeping that in perspective has made navigating COVID a little easier and more settling for me. But look, I have 90-year-old parents and a family member who has serious um, immunosuppression issues, and um, so this is always a concern. But this is a global humanitarian concern, and so I don't think of it in terms of how I'm navigating this really.
Right. Well, that's some pretty big perspective. So thank you for that. And I was going to ask you as it relates to Uptown if there's been any, um, you know, impactful lessons or opportunities that you've encountered because of COVID from a business perspective.
We got way out in
We're
front of
virtual
this.
for a long time.
Yeah, we got out in front of this early, and in fact, I was suffered a little bit of criticism early on. Um, I'm on a board of a school, and I saw the preparations taking place at that school in February
Hmm.
before it really got serious, and I took that lesson and applied it to our company really before anyone else was, and um, so we had a good head start here, and the lesson has been communication with our employees, and really trying to stay out in front of the communication piece with this, and encouraging. Unfortunately, in the apartment business, all of us have had to, we are essential, and you still have to plunge a toilet, you still have to paint, and you still have to take the garbage out, and you still have to maintain these assets. And I think knowing that, and preparing for that, and making sure that our frontline workers had all the resources that they needed was a critical component here as well.
Well said. And it was interesting to see our industry kind of propelled to the front line and called essential in light of that when you live with your customers, it is a very unique relationship that you have. And no matter what's going on, there is no ability to close doors,
Right.
or quarantine, so to speak, when people's lives are literally, under our roof. So,
Yeah.
well, interesting. Well, listen, I know that you're a busy man and you're probably ready to get your weekend started. So I have two more quick questions for you and we will wrap this up, Dan. So, one question that I wanted to ask, and we've talked a lot, so you may have already shared all of the fun facts about yourself, but is there a random fun fact that if you are, in a room, you're like, there's no way anyone else in this room shares this random detail about myself or my life or an experience you've had? Just a random fun fact.
Ooh. Next question, and I'll let me think about that. But
Okay, well, this is usually the closer. So I like to end these interviews asking, certainly people of your caliber and tenure in this industry, how do you think those professionals who have worked for you along the way would describe you as a leader?
um, most people describe me as very energetic. Um, I'm somewhat uninhibited in terms of ideas, and I do like to think out of the box. I like to explore change constantly. Um, Craig would define me as someone who moves a little fast and sometimes shoots before I aim. I'm in general, a pretty gut-driven guy, and the bean counters around me, who I need to keep me in line, tend to be much more data-driven, and I tend to be much more kind of gut-driven, and that's just my kind of crazy C student entrepreneurial piece. So I would say I'm highly entrepreneurial. I like to think of myself as nimble and thinking out of the box and energetic, and so it's so that's been that's that.
I
I'd
like
say
that. Well, I I don't
go
know
ahead.
enough of your team to fact check what they would say about you, but I like that self acknowledgement.
Yeah, um, I was such a C student. I guess the fun fact is that I am not a college graduate. Even though I went to college for 5 years, I did really poorly, and I then transferred back to UC and kind of slept along. And then I just started taking essential classes that I thought I would need for business, and just started taking just classes that wouldn't get me towards a degree any longer, just classes that I absolutely needed to have, like statistics and accounting and finance,
Right.
and I ended up coming up short. And Santa Ono offered me an honorary degree,
Honorary.
which I declined, um, and so it's not a fun fact, but it's a fact. And but I'll end up with 4 kids with college degrees, and my dad went to Harvard, and my mom is very accomplished, and all my siblings are very accomplished in college. So um, it's an interesting piece, and a couple times that came back to bite me, and I knew it would need to be work ethic and integrity would have to carry me forward. So
That's
that's
interesting.
relied on.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think our industry just now, in the last probably 5 years or so, has become more mainstream, and there are degrees available for people in property management. So I've encountered so many high level executives, owners, etc., everything in between, who share a similar story. Some people are students and some people aren't. I think that kind of goes along with the advice you talked about, which is know your lane and know yourself and give 100% at what you're doing. Can I ask one more question? This might be out of line, but what was the driver behind your decision to decline the honorary degree?
Um, oh, I'm a guy who likes to earn my way to things. So
We'll talk about integrity. Wow.
yeah,
Well, Dan, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
thank
I wouldn't have loved to talk to Craig, but I'm so happy that I got to talk to you instead. And
thank you.
look forward to watching Uptown. I'd love to interview if there are any other folks on your team that you think would be open to this, initiative and would enjoy this. Send them my way. But thank you very much, and thanks again for your support of our association and our industry and our city.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, enjoy the weekend, and we'll see
Okay.
everybody next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yep. Bye-bye.